For this instructional video, we will be demonstrating how to install an MWAC on our lab's green roof. The first thing we want to do is to get rid of any tall plants that could interfere with the ability of our MWAC to turn freely. It's helpful to have a pair of pruners. We want to get any tall growing vegetation as low as we can to keep the equipment turning freely into the future. Within the longest of the equipment boxes, you should have received metal poles with washers taped to them. Each pole has 2 washers resting on this coupler. The top side should be machine cut and very smooth, while the bottom side might be a little more rough and hand cut. The washer should be resting on top of that machine cut side, which is also the side that you want facing up. At the top of that metal pole you received, there should be a clip attached. It can be a little bit tricky to remove. In this video, I'm using another metal tool to help force it out. You also want to make sure you hold on to that clip for later. Within that package, you should also have received a metal pole protector cap, which you will place on top of the pole as you hammer it in to prevent the pole from deforming. We're being a little conservative with our installation in this video because we're putting it into a green roof, but poles in the field should be set at least 30 centimeters into the ground. You'll want to make sure that the pole is stable enough to withstand strong winds, and you'll also want to look at it from every angle to make sure that the pole is as straight as you can make it. Within your widest box, you should have received a fin like this one. At the top of your fin will be a number. This one is 075, so number 75. To install the fin, just slide it on top of the pole, and then take that clip from earlier and reinsert it at the top. It might also need a little bit of coaxing to settle back into place, but this clip will help to keep the fin secure. This is a good time to check and see if there's any vegetation left which might interfere with the ability of the MWAC to spin freely. The last part of our installation process is attaching the collection canisters. First, you want to make sure that the number on the bottom of the jar matches the number stamped onto the fin. Also on the underside of each jar will be either a 1, a 2, or a 3. This number will indicate where on the MWAC this jar is supposed to go. Number 1 goes at the top, then number 2 is in the middle, and number 3 will be installed at the bottom. Before we can attach our collection canisters to the MWAC, they do need to be disinfected. Step 1 of the sanitation process is to put on some gloves. The box containing the collection canisters should also include a package of sanitizing wipes you can use for this process. When you're wiping down the jar, you'll want to make sure to get around all of the edges and also all of the way inside the jar. If your hands are a little bigger and you're having trouble reaching the bottom, you can use something like a stick or a screwdriver to push the wipe further in and make sure you're getting the entirety of the interior of the jar. You'll also want to make sure to sanitize along the edge of the lid and both of the antlers. You can also see that one antler is longer than the other one. When you attach the canister to the MWAC, the longer antler should be facing into the wind. Since I can see that this is the longer antler, I want to make sure that it's facing in the opposite direction from the fin. If it's difficult to tell visually which antler is longer, you can unscrew the lid, which should give you a clearer view. When you reattach the lid, make sure it's screwed on tightly and flush with the jar, not loose or tilted. This is canister number 1, so it goes at the very top of our MWAC. The screws used to attach the canister on the side here are a little bit bigger, so I'm using a slightly thicker screwdriver to tighten them. When we attach the canisters, we want to make sure that the antlers are as straight as we can make them. After tightening the jar halfway, it's a good idea to step away to see if the jar is shifted or tilted. Here I have to loosen the attachment in order to re-straighten the canister, and then I keep checking it frequently until the jar is entirely secure. We'll then repeat this process for the other 2 jars. Jar number 2 goes next. First I check to find the longer antler, and then I install it in the middle position. While I did not sterilize this jar for this demonstration, please make sure to sterilize every jar and its lid before attaching them to the MWAC. Along with the pieces of the MWAC, you should have received a data sheet. On that data sheet, we need the height of every jar in centimeters recorded, as measured from the ground to the center of the antlers. This process is a little bit easier with 2 people, one person holding the MWAC steady and another person using the measuring tape, but I'm just going to use my knee to hold the fin steady here. It looks like this jar is about 39 centimeters above the ground, which is a little higher than we'd like it to be. We're looking for something closer to 32 centimeters. So I'm going to take that same screwdriver and then loosen this coupler, which will allow me to move the washers and drop the MWAC a little bit. When I feel like the MWAC is at the right height, I can tighten the coupler again to secure it at its new position. Now when I measure this height again, it's at 32 centimeters, which is exactly what we're looking for. We also want to make sure we measure and record the heights of canister 2 and canister 1. It looks like canister 2 is at 57 centimeters. And canister 1 is at 92 centimeters, which is exactly what we're looking for. Lastly, we want to do a full walk around of the MWAC just to make sure that everything is in order. We want to make sure all of the canisters are oriented correctly so that the longer antler is facing into the wind and the shorter is facing towards the fin. We also want to double check that pin at the top. In this video, this visible metal section is a little longer than what you will see in your MWAC. That's because we're on a green roof with limited depth and we couldn't install our pole as deeply as you will yours in the field. Regardless, the MWAC should feel secure. Then we want to ensure that the canisters are securely attached and that the coupler underneath the washers is fully tightened. Lastly, we want to do one more full spin just to make sure that there's nothing left that could interfere with the MWAC's operation. And that's our installation. Thank you!